In late January 1945, the Eastern Front was collapsing under the Soviet Vistula-Oder offensive, and German forces were in chaotic retreat. Operation Hannibal, launched to evacuate Wehrmacht personnel and tens of thousands of civilians from Gotenhafen, now Gdynia, funneled refugees onto any seaworthy hulls that could take them. The Wilhelm Gustloff, a 1937 Norddeutscher Lloyd liner requisitioned as a military transport and hospital, lay blacked out in the icy Baltic, crammed far beyond her 1,900 passenger capacity with wounded soldiers, Navy crew, officials, and terrified families. Under blackout and blizzard conditions, cold breath fogged the cabins. Panic and illness spread, and the stage was set for a catastrophic, brutal sinking. On January 30th, 1945, the Wilhelm Gustloff slipped out of Gotenhafen into the icy Baltic, packed with roughly 6,000 people, wounded soldiers, naval personnel, and terrified civilian refugees. Reports of Soviet submarine activity had circulated in the harbor, but the frantic pace of Operation Hannibal forced the liner to sail under blackout and through a blizzard, escorted only by a handful of minesweepers and torpedo boats. Below decks, bloodied stretchers lined narrow corridors. Coughing children clung to soaked blankets, and exhausted sailors tended hypothermic patients in improvised wards. Crew and officers fought to keep order as panic and grief moved through the decks. Maybe clicking subscribe would have saved them. Far to the north, the Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinesko, picked up radio traffic and sonar contacts and slipped into position to intercept the fleeing convoy, closing in on the Gustloff. On January 30th, 1945, around 9 p.m. in the freezing Baltic Sea, the Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinesko, fired a spread of torpedoes that struck the Wilhelm Gustloff, tearing into her port side and smashing bulkheads. Lights went out and steam stopped. Alarm bells and screams braided into a grotesque symphony. Decks pitched under frantic feet as davits jammed and lifeboats tangled against railings, while overcrowded corridors funneled bloodied civilians toward choke points. Radio rooms flooded or went dark, and orders could not reach muster stations. A wartime blackout and blizzard hid the vessel from rescue. Sailors hacked at twisted metal. Mothers clutched infants as freezing waves slammed open portholes. With escort vessels pulled back and minesweeper communications confused, limited rescue attempts faltered, leaving thousands exposed to hypothermia and the sinking that would soon consume them. Seconds after the initial blast, follow-up torpedoes from the Soviet submarine S-13 slammed into the Wilhelm Gustloff, tearing open seams and collapsing bulkheads. The liner began to list, its bow flooding and stern rising as compartments pancaked and the superstructure sheared away. Men and women, the wounded among them, were hurled into pitch-black, blood-smeared passageways, while hatches jammed and stairwells became trapdoors. Boilers exploded, scalding steam seared skin, and a grotesque cacophony of screams and wrenching metal filled the blizzard-dark night. Within an hour, the Gustloff plunged beneath ice-choked waves, dragging scores trapped below into a cold, merciless grave, and casting thousands into the freezing sea, clinging to debris and floating bodies. Minesweepers and escort torpedo boats fought to pull survivors from the treacherous, ice-choked waters, but were overwhelmed by the scale of the carnage, the biting cold, and the fear of further attack, resulting in chaotic, conflicting reports that would haunt navies and families. As the Wilhelm Gustloff sank on January 30th, 2045, the sea turned into a black grave, an ice-choked, howling maw that swallowed hundreds and tossed bodies like ragged driftwood. Survivors later described scalding steam, blood-smeared decks, and mothers clutching infants in testimonies, and in Operation Hannibal archives from Gotenhafen, now Gdynia. The attack came from Soviet submarine S-13 under Captain Alexander Marinesko, and the estimated death toll often cited as high as 9,400 turns individual tragedies into staggering statistical loss. That collision of personal horror and mass death forces us to confront hard questions about military necessity and moral responsibility. The sinking's aftermath became a contested, politicized memory during the Cold War, with German and Soviet narratives clashing over blame and casualty figures. Survivors and historians recorded blood-soaked testimonies, curated Gotenhofen and Operation Hannibal archives, and erected memorials to the ice-choked dead. The Wilhelm Gustloff's horror reshaped evacuation planning and exposed civilian vulnerability in total war, leaving a cold question. When will military expedience stop trumping human life?